Morality is an umbrella to describe an array of human intuitions and emotions about social cooperation. Most moral systems are elaboration of fundamental social response that includes empathy, fairness, reaction to harm, and perceived sex differences. But at best, we can only say that morality is normative while acknowledging that our sense of right or wrong changes over time. Now that brings into the picture the gruesome murder of Sharon Otieno, the second-year Rongo University student whose mutilated body was found in a thicket in Homa Bay County. Her murder, however, sparked public outcry, and it equally opened up the debate about the morals of the society. More important tonight is to have a conversation about the upsurge in the number of university students dating older men, sex partners. But there are key questions that needs an address. Number one, why are older men a soft landing spot for young female university students? Number two, are parents taking up the role that comes with the institution of parenting? And how honest, candid, and open should this conversation be? And finally, have we lost the moral compass as a society? Subject to discussion. Be part of the discussion too. On Twitter, the hashtag is NewsCompass. You can tag me at Ayub Abdikadir at Ebru TV Kenya. In the next 45 minutes or so, we will discuss this in detail. On my immediate right, however, is Paul Thandi, life coach and author at mindshift.co.ke. At the center is Betty Adera, advocate for peace and justice. Thank you so much for coming, gentleman and a lady. And on my far right is Kagondu Jr., counseling psychologist. Of course, the two normally join me for my Wednesday morning show as we discuss matters pertaining to social issues in this society. But thank you so much for making time on the program.
Thank you for
having us. I do appreciate your time. It's timely, and we have this situation, although we will not want to touch it from the justice perspective, because this is subject to court hearing and determination following the remanding of the governor, who is at the epicenter of investigations, together with personal assistant and Caspal Obiero. I'll start with you, Betty Adera, on this. Coming to you first. The media industry has invariably focused on the inappropriateness bit of the discussion that we have at hand. And that regards, of course, the age gap and the causes, but there has not been enough attention to the software issues around what we have witnessed in the country. Sharon's case is just a microcosm of perhaps a broader issue that happens in the society. Of course, chronologically, we have these cases also happened to other female university students. But speaking from your position as a mother, perhaps, and as a person who drives agenda in the society, how do we unlock the intricate case at hand, which looks like perhaps a cobweb scenario that needs a better understanding?
First of all, thank you for having me here, Abdi, tonight. And this particular issue touches me at a personal level, because I come from Migori County, and I cannot condemn enough, the gruesome murder of Sharon, and also condemn enough many other injustices, that occur to our girls and young women. I think for me, I will approach this issue from two levels. One is talk about what I call the principle of head of gold, feet of clay.
Okay. Head
of gold, feet of clay. Meaning that our young people in general, in the current context, need more guidance on the process to get to the head of gold, right? So they want to rush there very fast without fully understanding that to get there takes time. It's a process. There are failures, there are successes, and there are certain things that must be done right to get there, all right? So you can't just wake up one morning and the next day you want to drive this flashy car that your friend is driving, and you want to dress in a certain way as the social media is portraying it, without paying attention to the process to get there. My second approach would be, we need to look more closely at this man. Who is this man? Okay. All right? Where is he? What is he doing? What is it that drives him? All right? To get along, a much younger women. Because for me, I think that is where we need to really focus on, because you're talking about somebody who's older, somebody who has power by virtue of his age, someone who has power over these young women by virtue of perhaps position that they hold in society, by virtue of the money that they have. And they dangle that to these young women who are looking for that head of gold. But remember, their feet are still of clay.
Okay, Paul Thandi, I'll come to you. Then does it need, is it the time that we require a complete shift of the public opinion in the sense that we need to move from acceptance to skepticism so that we can get a better understanding. And in this sense, do we need to overcome our current presumption so that we get an accurate interpretation of the causes instead of relying more on the happenstances and coming up with perhaps some sense of reaction instead of having the preventive mechanisms or measures so that we can keep at bay such instances?
Well, I think the first thing is to accept it's happening anyway. And this is not the first time it has happened. And it does not mean the only thing we know and has gotten to the headlines is the only thing that has happened. So where we see, they always say where there's smoke, there's fire. So it means this is even happening at very, very low levels that do not make it to as big as Sharon is. And of course, we will condemn this at the end of the day. Okay. But my question is, looking at it from a life coach perspective, where did we disconnect? Because we never had these scenarios in the past. Okay. What happened? Did we leave our kids at some point and we said, we facilitate your education, just go to the school and get this? There's no single day we get morality taught at school. There's no single day you will sit down and tell her, this happens this way. And the other question, the big question is, she's talking about the head of gold, the things that these kids want. Do you work with them? Do you tell them the human journey? This is the process of acquiring whatever you want. Do they know what happens for them to have food on their table, to have the lifestyle they're living? Or do you just toss out the money? So working with them is very important. And the point of question is, where did the disconnect happen? And I think that's where the problem's are.
Okay, Kagondo, then I'll come to you on this. When of course, from a psychological perspective, what we have here is perhaps a mismatch in the case that we have all the blame now solely on the shoulders of the institution of parenting, and here of course includes the piecing together of the many households so that parents can take up that role in the institution. But clearly, has there been a bridge, and who needs to gap that bridge in the sense that parents need to take up that position? And how threatening are the other factors out there in the sense that also peer influence contributes to these factors? And we see people who live double lives, and we have seen statistically the number of suicides now skyrocketing because young people, if you can't attain this, then there's the pressure piles. If you stay decent, the pressure piles. We have a double-edged scenario, which it's this person at both levels. Damn if you do, damn if you don't.
Yeah, this shows, it's just a clear indication of how the systems have been broken down. And whenever we have such cases, everybody should be accountable as far as this is concerned. And it's not only a parental issue or whereby the parents are the ones who should carry all the burden, but also the society at large. And I remember we were discussing and asking, who is this society? It is just an inclusion of the members of the community, be the leaders. She was in a school, and I am sure most of the time we tend to think that even if somebody is in their college or they're in the university, they are mature, but they still need the guidance. So the question is, where were the people in charge in terms of maybe the department that she was in, or also her peers? We know there has been a lot of the peer, the comparison, whereby I will refer to it as a toxic comparison, whereby I want to see what Dandy is, the kind of a lifestyle he's leading, and I want to match the same. So you find that it has corrupted our values, the way we look at things, and more so we want to go to an extra length to meet whatever we want, especially the kind of a lifestyle that we want to live. Okay. Yeah.
Betadera, then we have the denominators here that are identified with such cases, because Sharon's case is just a fraction of what initially happened to female university students. But how well do we need to expand the scope of the socio-cultural practice in this case so that we can better understand the scenario at hand? Because at the moment, too, what we have is perhaps the continuous public outcry, which is in perpetual sense of continuity. But in the end of the day, we fail to address this, and then such an instance or instance happens in the near future, then we are at the same position with no solution. Is it time, and how ripe is it to have this discussion from the socio-cultural perspective?
If you ask me, and if it were up to me, I would actually implore on our president to declare gender-based violence in all its form a national disaster. Now, for me, I would want to approach that by the common understanding that girls are invisible. The vulnerabilities that they face when they are girls is so immense in this country, and nobody sees them at that point. There's a girl in probably Transmara, you know, who has to run away from home as she's running from the female genital mutilation. There's another girl in Busia County who has to sell her body in order to get sanitary towels that can keep her in school during her menses, which, by the way, must happen or should happen every other month, all right? And there's this girl in Majengo, for instance, who is living with her single mother, and there are 10 of them, and the single mother's only job is to look for food, because like that is the thing that she has to think about. Remember, at that age when all these things are happening to these girls, while the ground not being level, no one is seeing them until they struggle and make it to tertiary institution. Then is when we should call it, what has happened to this girl? Remember her background. Remember her vulnerabilities. If she needed help with sanitary towels, something so basic in primary school, she needed the same help when she got to high school. She still needs that help when she gets into the university or tertiary institution.
Okay, and then with regards to what we have, is this the point that the disconnect is perhaps what led to the vulnerability of them, that parents have perhaps abandoned the continuous care they used to give to the student, assuming or presuming that they are mature enough when out there, then they are ripe and they are vulnerable?
A couple of things happen really to many parents once their children get into the university or whatever tertiary institution post-secondary. Most of them now tend to think that, my child is now an adult. He or she should sort herself out, all right? So most parents at that age tend to struggle to raise the school fees, all right, the tuition fee. But they fail to realize that this child still needs to eat. She needs to dress. She needs to buy books. She needs to, pay for a hostel. She needs to do all these other things, all right? And then also, back to the same parenting. By the way, if you are not used to having these conversations of life issues with your child, when this child was younger, make no mistake, it is not as easy when this child is now a fully grown adult who also has his or her own mind and is legally an adult, by virtue of being 18 years old, but still so dependent on the parent. So many parents tend to say that I'm done with this child, let me move and focus on another one, but not realizing that really that's the point when your child needs you the most. This child is going to go there and meet meet other kids from all manner of background. Then there's the peer pressure issue, which is so real we cannot fail to talk about that. But for me, what I think the conversation we need to have is, no one is promising any human being an easy life. Life is tough for everybody at all levels. But how are we empowering our young people from a tender age to be able to transverse the challenges of life? Peer pressure will be there. But how is she or he equipped to, circumvent that and still achieve her education
Paul
and social
Vandi, then I'll come to you on this particular question. There's need to perhaps demystify this particular idea that men believe they will acquire money, power, status by sporting young, glamorous, and well-outfitted young female. Now, to be specific on the spot, of course, female university students. Then how do we take up that conversation in the sense that we make it, we break it down for the society to better understand? Because at the moment, what we have is a false presumption, and we are not able to make the accurate interpretation, especially from the men's perspective, because what we have, or much of the debate now, concerns about female, and especially young female university students in the country. The
question is, what mirror are our kids reading from, Because anything that is becoming, and the kids, they're the best learners, You might tell them, don't do this, don't do that, but they copy what you do, not what you keep saying, not what you pick to fight them, and verbally as they grow. And the question is, what kind of an image have you led them to learn? Because at the end of the day, you look at the kind of teachers you have at the moment. Your consistency on communicating this kind of change, the institution of life and the kind of things they're expecting as they progress. the consistency that you put into that dialogue is the outcome that you expect. But you don't expect you communicate to them once a month and then you're there asking them what happened between these days that we didn't communicate. So your consistency, you're fighting any other teacher that you have. You're talking about online. We're talking about peers like we've mentioned at the moment. So what are you putting into? And does parenting really have an expiry date at the end of the day? I don't think so. Parenting is a long-term endeavor. And the commitment should be, are you able to invest in yourself as a parent so that you can understand whatever the kid is going through? Do you update yourself for the challenges they are going through? Because your generation, their generation is totally different. And when we talk about these men that are doing these kind of acts, the question is, who are our leaders?
Okay.
These people that we place there, who are they? Because if leadership, and that is the template that we follow it from, then that means whatever is being done is part of the leadership that we expect. So if our leaders could think this through, if we could look at the selection of who we are placing there, then the image and what we expect our kids to learn, they'll have something better to reflect from.
Okay, Kagondo Jr., psychologically, now speaking from that perspective, the attachment theory in science explains that people's or adult relationship reflects the way they were treated by their caregivers, parents to be specific and in brackets. Women who need security of a father figure will seek a security from older men, the situation that we have at the moment, and that's the excuse, though flimsy by many young female in the country. But isn't it a challenge too, also, on the institution of parenting to seek redress on this particular matter? Because if the lady or the young girl at a tender age doesn't have that symbiotic relationship with the father, or there is the absence of the fatherhood figure within the household, then it means that she'll be vulnerable outside. And that is the case that we have at the moment. So how do we seek the address? Because we have the scientifically proven case here, which clearly attests to that.
It's so true, because at the genital stage, this is whereby a kid, be it a boy or a girl, they get to identify their gender or their sex in this case. And at this point, this is whereby they are looking for the father figure to fulfill and to affirm the love to them. If it is for the boys, they're looking for the mother figure to show them affection, to show them that love, the emotions, to fulfill all that. And if this doesn't happen, then later on in life, it's going to affect them in one way or the other. We always say that whatever happened to you and the way that you were brought up between the ages of 0 to 7 and at times to 10 years, this is what really what describes what your personality is. It's what will a clear indication of who you are going to be. And in most cases, if you abuse at this age, you're also going to turn out to be an abuser. And you may ask, why many men, they will turn out to maybe go looking for young girls when they are in their 40s. Why some ladies will also do the same, they go looking for boys at that age. The thing is, they are trying to fill in some of the gaps that they had left out, because we say that during that time they are fixated, and whenever you are fixated, that means that you also have to negotiate that stage at no matter what age in your life. So it's a clear indication that the parents really need to be there for their kids, more so the fathers for their mothers, and also for the girls and also for the boys, because they really need them. If they don't do that, then they'll be looking for the older men to fill that gap.
Okay, then filling that gap, Betty, I'll come to you on this. Perhaps from an experience perspective too, that needs a committed parent institution of parenting, because if the voids or the vacuum is there, it means that then outside will be the primary source of information for this young kid when he goes or when she goes or he goes outside, vis-a-vis, of course, the situation that we have at hand. But does it also speak to the fact that the commitment need to be taken up by parents includes to ensure that they safeguard this institution for prosperity of the household and out there for the security purposes of protection, insulation of this kid, so that their primary source becomes the house, their second source becomes the schoolyard or the institution of the school. And in this case, we have the common balance. But at the moment, it appears that we have rise in the number of broken marriages, divorce rate is high in the country, and this is the inflection point all these problems are stemming from.
Very good analogy right there. But for me, what I say about parenting would be, it is not the physical presence of a mother or a father that we're talking about here. We are talking about engagement. I've seen families where father is there, mother is there, but kids still turn out, go south, all right? But I've also seen cases where a single mother struggling with her kids and they just turn out right. What is the difference? I think our kids, as they're growing up, need to be assured that the home environment is friendly for them. And what does that mean? It means that they should always yearn to go home.
Okay.
Same to the mother, same to the father, same to the way that family is structured. This space we are calling the family needs to be a safe space for all children. But I'll tell you, Abdi, that's not always the case. There are so many cases of sexual violation that actually happen right inside the house or the home where this child or this girl needs to feel the safest. So I think we need to go back to the basics and ask ourselves, where did the raising a child, is the role of a whole village. It takes a village to raise a child. Where did we throw that away? What happened? And even more importantly, how can we go back there? It is true, there are parents who are struggling with their kids. Mtoto wako anaweza kukushinda. That can also, happen. Yeah. But that does not necessarily mean that that's the end of engagement between parent, child, because mtoto wako amekushinda. How do we empower the parents to seek appropriate help, outside the home that will bring back this child, to order for him or her to do what? To prosper. Now, I also think in that same light, bringing a child has two faces to it. There is the responsibility of the caregiver, but there's also the responsibility of the child. I think we also need to talk about that for a moment. A child goes to school. Teacher has his role. The child also has his role. It's not about the teacher to cause this child to pass an exam or to cause the child to understand. The child has his role. So parenting is a lifelong process, and as my colleague is saying, it doesn't have an expiry date. Now, as your child, really grows up, all right, you also need to embrace that and tweak your messaging to suit the context and to suit the age of this child and also your circumstance. What you tell your 2-year-old is not the same as what you're going to tell your 15 or 16-year-old. But they also must know that as your mother, as your father, I'm going to provide 1, 2, 3, 4. But you as the child, this is also your responsibility. I think we need to bring that out more strongly, and even when this child, this child is even younger. Now, I'm a parent myself and a single mother raising young men and a niece who are all in the university. And I can identify with what's happening to parents, but also what's happening in the life of these young people. I have them in my own house. And I think we need to some extent, support parents, but also cut some slack. We've bashed parents, we've beaten them up, but we are not showing them how. How do you regain, conversation that is lost between you and your teenager? Because if it is lost, you're not going to find it when this young man reaches, 20. But also let these young people know that as you transition fully into adulthood and into independence, you have a role to play. For the rest of your life, you cannot be blaming your parents. That covers to some point. But when you're 40, when you're 30, I mean, come on.
You have to fill up the line.
Come on. Step up and sort yourself out.
Utahamalini.
Utahamalini. Exactly.
Of course, there is the need there. Yeah, there is the general consensus. And it defies all logic when you're 30, 40. But there's need to pick up the point and fill up the remaining percentage. But I'll come to you on this, Paul, before we go on break. Older men do represent socially valuable attributes in the society, or valued attributes that lead his younger partners, especially the female, the opposite sex, want to associate with him. And with age, men may acquire greater power, possess property, or even financial masculinity. Otherwise, when this becomes an enticing factor, then it means that we are on the descendancy. And what we have is a case scenario where parents of young females who are engaged in perhaps in complex love triangle know of the situation, but they keep self-veiling themselves from the fact or the reality. The consequence we have at many points, the outcome is death. But equally, has the society become so materialistic that we have abandoned the morals, the African standard that uphold or perhaps punctuates how we live and undertake our daily activities within the coffers of the society?
Well, I will maybe want to start by asking, how does success look like today? It's a V8. You need to have something in front of your belly. You need to have a little property there. You need to own. You need to look like. You need to eat at. You need to be hanging out with. That's a success. But if we go back to Africa, as you've asked, who are our leaders? the same way you will meet someone who has this property you're talking about, and the same respect you'll treat with them, it's the same thing. It's the same one you had for the medicine men we had at that point. And so the picture that you're painting in the society and the people we are upholding to be successful, we don't ask the questions of morality. When we are getting people even to the offices that they hold, that is not a question of it. It's what can you do? How much can you give me? During your campaign, what will be my benefit? Yeah. When you get in, what can I benefit from you? And that is what we are taking and painting it as leadership. And our kids are reading, they are reading from the same book, because we said kids, they observe far much better. The tone, the way you talk to them, the kind of examples you give them in terms of the success you want them to have. And within time, they're like, so for me to be successful, I need to be associated, to look like. And when I have these things, that is the only time I'll be successful. It's not even your morality. So you could have money and all these things that we call the material, and at the end of the day, the society will see you as the righteous one, as the better leader. And as we are paneling our kids towards the end, she's touched on that point. I think we overcompensate our kids. Looking how we've grown ourselves and the kind of lives we're giving our kids, they can't even take plates away from the table. They can't even be able to organize something simple at the end of the day in the house. So the duties are supposed to be there, so that as they grow, as the duties gain, and as you release them from your house, they know this is the process of getting money. This is the way you acquire life, and life is a process at the end of the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a sad thing that we have glorified the social ills in the society by looking at our girls as an investment, whereby we need some return from it. And whenever they get a rich guy in the society, we see it as a jackpot for the family, whereby they are going to earn a lot of money, get a good life. But if we instill the right values to the kids, then I feel some of these issues may be addressed in a good way, and we shall manage.
Okay. Better later then. When we talk about that, despite putting parents under the spotlight, largely does it speak to the fact that also the society is wrought from the very top? I mean, when you have leaders elected not on principles, basis, or merits, but the fact that he or she is from your tribe, and largely is the problem that we have political, although I don't want to discuss that around the roundtable at the moment, is perhaps that the script has not been positive regarding the attainment of the political maturity we expected to in the aftermath of the 1991 multi-party democracy. And in the event over the periods of the past elections, you have seen upsurge in the number of political parties, but not substantial political delivery in terms of substance. Does it also speak to the fact that this is an entire rot that needs a total address, because at the moment we're in that profound mess situation?
Remember, our leaders who are elected in public office come from somewhere. They come from among a people, all right? So assuming we are all thieves, 4 of us, right? And people have to choose one of us to hold office. That's gonna be a thief. Okay. That's gonna be a thief. All right. My point, I think, is that on that particular issue, we need to look at some structural issues as a country, if we are to ever get leaders who can really cross us over. All right. A hungry voter, what is his or her immediate preoccupation? Is that person, person who's vying, who will give me a kilo of sugar, who will give me a packet of unga. That's the one I will vote for.
Sure.
They sell their birthright, to choose that person who's going to have them in mind, who's going to cause systems to work for them. And unless we address youth unemployment, we address poverty in this country, I think let's sit pretty and be sure that for the longest time ever, we are going to have leaders who are glorified for the wrong reasons.
Okay.
Yeah.
On that note, gentlemen and a lady, we take a short break on the program. Many thanks for choosing to stay with us on NewsCompass. After the short break, in the last 25 minutes, we'll come back, talk about the statistics, and take a look at the report that has been scientifically proven beyond reasonable doubt, as we further dissect the topic at hand, whether the society has abandoned its role and what is the role of the institution of parenting. Of course, regarding the skying number of young female, especially university students, who are falling into the den of older men. After the short break on NewsCompass. All right, thank you so much. You're still watching the program. We now shift gear to the flip side of the discussion here on the roundtable. Of course, now we put under the sport young men also who are now being caught in the den too, of course, in similar fashion, but from a different perspective in the country. I've seen also what happened with the likes of with the reports that came out of Parliament pertaining unnamed women representative, of course, with regard to her dalliance and relationship with a young man in the country. Well, this is a subject of discussion. I'll start with you, Paul Thandi, to be fair, because we wanted to look at it from the other perspective too, because this is an honest discussion.
Yes, it is.
Because what has been happening across the public platform, especially on social media platform, has been cosmetic. And beyond the cosmetism needs perhaps a permanent solution to the problem at hand. So how do you address it from that perspective too? Because it's not only happening to young females, but also to young men out there who are vulnerable and because of socioeconomic status are now falling into the trap of perhaps willing, in quotes, sponsors who are willing to bankroll them. And in the end, what we have seen is consequences of like the court cases we witnessed in the country.
Well, I think when you talk about the young men, I think this is what we call the Ben 10 generation. Yeah? The older ladies getting a young guy to soothe and take care of her needs at some point. So the question I think we need to look at is, why don't we address these young men? Because I think maybe they get better terms. The settling in the deal is a bit better. But look at it this way. How many single mothers do we have at the moment? And how many people are willing to step out and even just jump in as an uncle, you know, as someone of the age to the mother, who is willing to step in and share this kind of information at the end of the day? Because you're saying everyone is vulnerable. And the competition that these young ones are fighting from, they're all in the same platform. They share the same Facebook page. They share the same pressure. So when this one shows their lifestyle has advanced, then this other one wants to do the same thing. And we've been closing our eyes and saying it's to the girls, it's to the ladies, but silently. Okay. And yet we know this is happening. So the question is, what kind of families are we brewing? Because if this will be the head of a family, I'm worried how that family is going to look like.
Well, Kagondo, then what we have here is perhaps the cutting across line of perhaps peer influence here with regards to no specificity in terms of it affecting different people of different age groups. But does it largely speak to the fact that we're also having this happening at from the male's perspective too? And is it a scenario or perhaps a case study of a total moral decay in the society?
It's just a ripple effect of what you were discussing earlier. We have a girl who is living a very good life, and there's a boy who is looking up to her. He wants to marry her, but he can't match whatever the old guy is giving. So what do? They have to go for the old mommy for them to get what they can get to treat the young girl.
So both parties have primary sources.
Yes.
They are the secondary sources.
Yes.
So we have perhaps a case scenario of, like, say, biologically food chain.
It's an ecosystem.
It is by the way. It is.
Yes.
Okay. It is a man-eat money,
and
the same thing happens. So you find that there's a lot of pressure that is the boys are under, because they want to portray this lifestyle whereby they can attract the girls or maybe showcase that they're doing very well in life. And how do they manage all this? They have to look for an option, and this is whereby they go for the older ladies to finance some of their expenses. So I feel the young men are not left behind, because even in the universities you find them for getting the sexually transmitted marks, whereby for them to do well, they have to sleep with the lecturers, they have to engage with the lecturers. So it's not only the girls, but also for the young men.
Okay. Yeah. Betty Adera, I'll come to you. Let me provide perhaps or quote part of a recent Finnish study that was done in Finland. More than 12,000 people, including young male and female, were questioned in this particular report. And a lot of young women do in fact prefer their romantic matches to be older, the vice versa for the male, because they prefer younger women perhaps in their early 20s because of fertility and other reasons that the report here mentions. While it has been proven scientifically, how do we legalize it in the end that it's not bad to be in a relationship? But here we have a situation where instead of living or perhaps leading or channeling to properly the institution of marriage, we have death trap perhaps as the consequence or the byproduct of the entire case scenario that we have. So in terms of legalizing it, if it ends up to be a success story about the institution of family, then we have something to celebrate about as a society. But what we have is a piling up of cases of deaths and inconsequential outcome of this relationship. So how do we balance the situation at the moment, because there's a clear mismatch?
For me, I think while you quote a study from Finland, the findings mirror what's happening here in Kenya. And traditionally, women were expected to marry upwards. You know, you marry someone who's older, you marry probably someone who's more educated than you, marry someone who's more moneyed, you know, than you. And that's how it has been for a while, although that kind of dynamics is changing. And we're also seeing the boy child, you know, increasingly becoming under siege. Okay. under siege, right? And the principle I talked about earlier of head of gold, feet of clay does not leave the boy child out. That bug has also caught up, you know, with them. So for me, being in a relationship at the right age is not bad. Actually, when you're old enough, we expect you, you know, to start, you know, being in relationships with the opposite sex. And just having relationships, I mean, you get to meet people, you get to know how to manage a few things. That's not the issue. For me, the issue would be, what is the value-based system around the relationship you're talking about? All these things we've talked about since we came is actually what I call a sophisticated way of sex work. Okay. Truth be told, sex work is what? Having sex in return for something. It can be the marks, it can be the nice shoes, it can be the car, it can be what? You know, but it's no longer anymore about koinange. You know, all we are talking about right now is sex work. The slay king, that is sex work. And sex work as an industry is demand driven, all right? There is somebody who needs that service. That is why sex work has been there since God created this earth. All right? The oldest industry. And it's the oldest industry. That's a reality we need to talk about. But I think, back to our young people in our context, both boys, you know, and girls, I think the onus is on everybody to start and or continue instilling the right kind of values. I expect my daughter or my son to eventually introduce me to a young woman that he wants to be serious with, all right? But he also has to know that there's a process, you know, to get there. And I want to support you through this process. What is it that you don't understand? What is it that might go wrong or go right? I want to have that one-on-one adult-like, you know, conversation with my own child. But I also want the preacher in church to reinforce my message, the teacher in school to reinforce my message. You see what I mean? And I think we just need to agree, as my two colleagues have said, we have a situation here as a country. And if nothing is done like yesterday, we run the risk of losing an entire generation of young people, meaning we have our future on the rocks. Okay.
Paul Thandi.
Yes.
According to statistics or stats, there is consistent and large-scale attachment of young male and female to relationships. And the feeling here is that, according to this report, they feel securely attached. But that's not the real reality of the conditions that we're experiencing, not only in Kenya, not to confine ourselves, but also across the continent and also across the international front. And the outcome has been pretty bad, pretty consequential in terms of ripping of the society with beautiful ladies and beautiful men. But in most instances, what we have here is them self-depicting the wrong picture, and we need to perhaps refresh that argument or sentence and create the right or correct interpretation or for these young people. So how do we drive this discussion and debate from the house, in the sense that we have them at our social norm scenarios or settings, so that we can have them candidly from the peer perspective, and also the fact that teachers should come into the conversation so that we can have a triangular approach to this entire mess that we're handling?
I think my first question from that finding will be, secure from what? They feel secure, but secure from what? What is this place that they are running from? What is this thing that they want to be away from? And what is the definition of this security? Because as Odera said, if the home becomes a place you want to go back to, then you have security already. So how is your home? How is this home made at the end of the day? And this security, if we just go deep down and try to demystify it, I don't think it's an emotional security, secure place. I don't think it's a physical secure place. Because you've read the papers, you've seen it online. The kind of things you're asked to do in this kind of trade, this painted kind of prostitution. They are key demanding things. Why? Because there's a price tag to it. I paid for it. I've done this. I've bought this. I took you here. So when I say jump,
no
you
lunch
ask
for
how
free.
high. So
There's no lunch for free.
There's no lunch for free. So I don't think we are talking about security for now. So the security that we are looking at this moment is, what do people see about me? That is the only security that they're worried about. And if you make home to be okay, you tell them, hey, right now we don't have money. We want to do this when money comes. So your kids understand there's a time that we can't be able to do these things. And there are times things go slow. There's a time things happen. And that is life, the nature of life on itself. So the security that your kid is looking for, that secure place, I think to start with, it should be made at home. It should be made at school. And if we attack this conversation from all these corners, any place that the platform and anywhere we allow our kids to go, then I think we'll start creating the security that is at jeopardy. Yeah.
Okay, Kagundo Junior, from a psychological perspective, to prevent a psychological warfare, because we have the generation that is left behind who see their peers leaving them, perhaps ending up in death or at some point suicide, then the first audience are the peers who they belong in the same category. The second external audience out there is the society. Where do we strike the balance for them to better understand the different happenings at the different levels?
Yeah, what will happen is that there is secondary trauma in terms of the side effects of all this. And whenever you have your peer or your friend undergoing all these menace, then in one way or the other, you're going to be affected. And this will be transited to the society at large. So I feel the conversation should start from where Dandy has well elaborated from, the house, the home. If we're able to manage all this, then I feel it will be in a better position. Because whenever the kids in the home, they also have their peers, their friends, who happen to be the members of the society. And if you're able to mold your kids in the right way, and the other parent is able to do the same, then we have a secure society. But then we also need, I like what you echoed, you had mentioned something to do with the schools. We have the church leaders, because most of them, they'll paint the whole issue in a good way. They don't call the spade a spade. Okay. They want to decorate it, and in a way that we want to see as if it's a very good, nice thing.
They're also the sponsors.
They're also the sponsors. It is the sad reality. It is the sad.
The church leaders.
But the Pope forgives them. The Pope forgives them what they've done. So
and we have these serious cases too in Australia and also in the Vatican
Exactly,
City.
yes.
And we have seen the Catholic Church coming under heavy criticism pertaining the conduct of some priests.
And it's happening right here.
Equally, the presses that,
that
people should seek solace are now turning out to be the dens that consume these young people.
You know what happened is, if this young girl says that she is moving out with a certain old man, and the person who is offering the prayers, they want to put their hands on them, and after one touch, whatever will follow, it's something that it will lead to all these social ills. So I feel these are places that we really need to be candid and be straight in whatever we're doing as far as managing all this.
Does justice have a no-go zone? Because we get these cases, they're reported, but then what happens? It all goes silent, then as Kenyans we forget.
But where it's supposed to go, there's a sponsor there.
Exactly.
And they want to protect their own.
The ecosystem is...
ecosystem.
They want to protect their very own.
Yeah, the question is...
So we are literally talking about perhaps a cobweb or within which, or a framework within which all these things are happening. And one final question before I let you go and bring my viewers up to speed with what has happened in the world of sports. There needs to be definitely a stakeholder approach to this particular scenario. Parents on one side, the second resources, the schooling, of course, teachers need to take up the discussion, and of course the people under the spotlight themselves, young male and female in the country. One, how do we need to frame the discussion about this to them, with them rather, because with comes with two-way communication, because two speaks only to one. And how do we need to package that in the sense that we have the selling point, or parents have the selling point, and this message is clearly conveyed to them instead of the recent neglect and the sidelining that is affecting these young people in the country?
Well, I think I want to conclude by saying that you don't want to have scars of a war you don't want to remember. Because from a life coach, most of the time when you sit down with people, the reason they cannot be able to move forward, the reason they cannot be able to make actions and commit to the future is because of the things that are holding them behind. It's okay. You're going to get those shoes. How long will they last? You're going to eat that food. How long will it last? You're going to do these things, and your competitors, and at that point, you're in campus, you might be the winner. You might look like the life others will want. But what happens to you? There's no single day you will sit down and delete all the things that you've done. Okay. So anything you're doing right now, it's just a pillar and a tool that you're creating, that is creating a life that you're looking up to. So the kind of things that you're exposing yourself to, these will be your future problems. These will be the things that you will need to deal with at some point. Okay. And secondly, for the family part of it, okay, I think we need to hold what Odera said. We need to give our children responsibilities. Okay. They need to know they have a role to play in their life, in their wellness. It's not for you to just supply what they need, what they want. You need to tell them, this is my role as a parent. Okay. I can do only this. And it's for you to be able to do this other percentage, okay, so that the school can do this other percentage. And the transparency of it and working, okay, with them, I think that will lead us to a better place. Okay, Betty. At the moment.
There is no young person who doesn't know a friend who has fallen due to all this that we're talking about. Mm. There's also no young person who doesn't know a close friend, okay, whose scenario was so bad but has managed to transect, the world of peer pressure and all this sponsorhood thing and still achieved their social and education goals. So for me, my message would be, let us believe our young people. Let's instill a message of hope to them. Let us help them to appreciate the fact that we do not have a tomorrow without them. And also let us bring out the message that they need to take up those responsibilities now to be able to do what it is that we are doing one day, which is very soon, when we are too old to do it. But bottom line, okay, let's show them love. Let's create environments that's friendly to them everywhere they go. Okay.
I'm so happy that this discussion is taking place, because we have been able to indicate that everybody is accountable as far as all this is concerned, both the kids and also the parents, the young people, and the society. And as much as we told that the body is the image or the temple of God, let's walk the talk, because it's just an indication of a replica of what is happening at home. Our daddies, our mummies, they're bringing in the uncles, the aunties in this case, okay, whereby they contrary to what it is expected. But the thing is, there is hope. And if somebody has missed a step, we can correct this, okay, and if we get them in the right way, then we'll have a safer society. Thank you. Thank
you so much, Betty Adera, Kagondo Jr. and Paul Thandi, for making time, and I'm happy to have heard from parents. Of course, I am on the other end too. And thank you so much for making time on NewsCompass. Yeah.